New York's next mayor could be Zohran Mamdani, the first socialist and first Muslim mayor in city history. Bernie Sanders tells us why and what it might mean. Mamdani still has not won the endorsement of Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, but he's opposed strongly by Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi, who also joins us. Can Andrew Cuomo, running as an independent, pull off an upset? Top New York strategists debate his chances and the future of New York if he falls short. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. We have a theme tonight, as you might have noticed, and I'm going to try to get us there with some song lyrics. I know what I'm needing, and I don't want to waste more time. I'm in a New York state of mind. Tonight, this show is in a New York state of mind, and for good reason. Zohran Mamdani appears poised at age 34 to become mayor of New York City. The Democratic Socialists' expected victory would deepen divisions within the Democratic Party about what it stands for and why. That's a story by itself. But there's another reason we are in a New York state of mind. Think about this. 6 political figures animating life in America today grew up in New York, made their money, cut their political teeth within 25 miles of one another. Let me list them. President Trump, Jamaica, Queens. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Midwood, Brooklyn. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, downtown Brooklyn. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Parkchester, the Bronx. And the 2 main rivals for New York City mayor, Andrew Cuomo, Jamaica, Queens. Mamdani, born in Uganda, moved with his parents at age 7 to Morningside Heights on the Upper West Side. Incidentally, the Trumps and Cuomos have known each other for decades. Trump's father, Fred, was a customer at Andrew's grandfather's grocery store in Queens. And when young Andrew Cuomo was an up-and-coming lawyer, one of his firm's clients was Donald Trump, the developer. Trump has branded Mamdani a communist, something Mamdani, a socialist, denies. On 60 Minutes, the president ended weeks of evasiveness and offered this semi-endorsement of Cuomo.
I'm not a fan of Cuomo one way or the other, but if it's going to be between a bad Democrat and a communist, I'm going to pick the bad Democrat all the time, to be honest with you.
Back to Billy Joel's hit, New York State of Mind. Joel wrote it in 1975 as a sort of love song to New York after returning there after spending several years of disillusionment in Hollywood. Now, there wasn't much to love in New York in 1975. It faced bankruptcy and financial ruin, the product of profligate spending, excessive hiring, and city residents fleeing high crime for the suburbs. Mamdani's campaign has been fueled by a so-called youthquake. Young New Yorkers also disillusioned by something else, high costs, and captivated by promises of free buses, free daycare, and rent freezes. They have no memory, individually or collectively, of New York's hard times and what led to them in the mid-1970s. Their New York state of mind is now. And so we begin a full show on that great city, its future, democratic socialism, and what it might mean for politics nationwide. Ed O'Keefe starts us off at the CBS Broadcast Center in the heart of New York City with where the race stands. Ed, always great to see you.
Major, good to see you. And, you know, last week there was a clip that surfaced online of Mamdani being asked by someone to identify certain pieces of music. He couldn't identify one from a Billy Joel song, which may just tell us more than anything that generationally, at least, Mamdani, not necessarily tied to those hits of the past, very much focused here on the present. This is his to lose. And in the last 24 hours, this local race over local concerns has very much become nationalized by the president's comments to 60 Minutes. The Mamdani campaign making hay of the fact that the president essentially endorsed the former governor, who is a Democrat now running as an independent because he lost the primary to Mamdani. And it looks like the former governor was on a radio show here in the city today and was being asked about that apparent endorsement when he hung up on the radio hosts, not wanting to answer any questions about that. So Cuomo realizes that in a city where the current president, even if he is a New Yorker by birth, is not very popular, having his support may be the nail in his coffin. But we've also seen something major that I think those of us who cover politics nationally and rarely get to do it here on the streets of New York see usually in early primary or caucus states, and that is an army of people knocking on hundreds of thousands of doors across the boroughs of this city to turn out supporters for Mamdani. Those that do that kind of precinct level work in those states for presidential primaries are going to come look at what Mamdani has done here, inspiring multi-generations of people who are backing his bid and realizing that he needs all the help he can get. This afternoon, we were up just a few blocks from here in the Upper West Side talking to a handful of 20-somethings and 70-somethings who are working with him to try to make this happen, volunteers. And there was a kid who came over from North Brooklyn saying, my neighborhood's locked up, but I know he needs support over here in Manhattan, so I'm going to spend the afternoon knocking on doors. You don't see that happening for Andrew Cuomo.
That's going to be my next question, Ed. Is there any kind of either mild or concerted get out the vote effort for Andrew Cuomo that in any way, shape, or form resembles what you're seeing manifest for Mamdani?
No, not on the streets, but certainly on the airwaves. Most of the ad buys over the weekend during football games were for Cuomo or the PACs who love him, and essentially raising the concerns that the former governor's raised about the assemblyman this entire time. He's too young and inexperienced. If you find yourself in danger on the subway in the coming years under Mayor Mamdani, the cops may not be there to help you. You know, basic quality of life concerns and concerns that Mamdani himself isn't experienced enough to do it. That is why you see the Mamdani campaign continue to focus on, and today at least, in essence, belittle Cuomo because he's getting Trump's support. The argument that Mamdani's made the whole time is that Mayor Adams, who dropped out of the race, and Cuomo would be far too aligned with the president at the potential detriment to New York City. They turn around and say because he's so disliked by the president, it could put the city at a disadvantage. And even Saturday Night Live over the weekend made the prescient point that no matter who becomes mayor, their biggest challenge is likely the guy that lives in the White House, and they're going to have to figure out a way to work with him. So we'll see here. The big goal now, or the thing to watch, is if it is indeed Mamdani's to win, can he get over 50%? In the last few years, in two-way races, essentially, you've seen your mayors elected here in the 60s, even low 70s, of support against a Republican. In a three-way race that involves the Republican Curtis Sliwa, and with potential support for Cuomo, maybe have grown just a few points in the last few weeks because Mayor Adams dropped out. If they can hold Mamdani below 50%, his opponents will be able to say, you wonder if this guy has a wide mandate to lead the city. We'll see.
Is it a victory, and is it one with a mandate? A question we will try to answer tomorrow night. And Ed O'Keefe will be with us to do just that. Ed O'Keefe, thanks so much.
Take care.
As Zohran Mamdani's campaign continues to draw national and even international attention, well, my team and I took a deeper look at the state of socialism in America and Zohran Mamdani's rise.
Thank you, my friends.
Three-term New York State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani, a social media-savvy Democratic socialist, is on the cusp of becoming mayor of New York City.
New York is not for sale.
Mamdani won the Democratic primary promising free public transit, free daycare, more rent-subsidized housing, 200,000 more housing units, and city-owned grocery stores with lower prices than for-profit markets. New Yorkers know better than most that few things in life are free. Mamdani intends to raise taxes on the city's millionaires, a daunting challenge he would have to get through the state legislature. Mamdani's rise was aided by a relatively weak Democratic primary field, an unpopular incumbent, Eric Adams, and a scandal-plagued former governor, Andrew Cuomo.
And the billionaires got scared. Or, as the New York Times would describe it, the Hamptons was basically in group therapy about the mayoral race.
Mamdani's given new visibility to the Democratic Socialists of America, a small leftist coalition first organized in the 1970s as part of a broader workers' rights movement. The DSA operated at the fringes of New York politics for decades and wasn't even a prominent player in the Occupy Wall Street protests in 2011. It gained some traction with Bernie Sanders in 2016 with his presidential run, even though Sanders was never an official member of the organization.
Millions of people are saying the status quo is not acceptable. We need a political revolution.
Mamdani's given the DSA new currency and a softer platform. Gone are calls to abolish police and prisons, replaced by demilitarizing police and adding social workers to help police officers diffuse mental health and drug problems on the streets and in the subways. One DSA constant that has lingered through the years, support for Palestinian causes. Mamdani said that issue, more than any other, drew him to the DSA. In the closing days of his campaign, against the backdrop of international conflict, Mamdani denounced Islamophobia.
To be Muslim in New York is to expect indignity. But indignity does not make us distinct. There are many New Yorkers who face it. It is the tolerance of that indignity that does.
The DSA officially backs the so-called BDS movement, which stands for Boycott, Disinvestment, and Sanctions, tools to pressure Israel into granting more rights to Palestinians. This platform and other comments have led many to accuse Mamdani of anti-Semitism or overt hostility to Israel's right to exist.
For anyone to care about these issues, we have to make them hyperlocal. We have to make clear that when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF.
Sanders gave progressives a new pathway to legitimacy within the Democratic Party, creating an opening for Mamdani. With Sanders earlier this year, Mamdani said the only way a socialist mayor, should there be one, can quiet skeptics and critics is to over-deliver on the affordability promises.
We have to reckon with the failures. And one of the first things I will be doing when I get to City Hall, with the help of each and every one of you, is to audit the entirety of the work that we do and that we fund. Because we need to deliver excellence.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders joins me now. Senator Sanders, always good to see you. You grew up in Brooklyn. You have endorsed Zohran Mamdani. You have campaigned for Zohran Mamdani. Do you expect him to win? And if he does become the next mayor of New York City, what does that mean for the future of the Democratic Party?
Well, what it means, I think, for the whole country is that when you have a candidate like Zohran, who is taking on the oligarchs and the billionaires in New York, he's taken on Donald Trump, the president, who wants to see him lose, has endorsed Cuomo. He's taking on the Republican establishment in New York. He's taking on the Democratic establishment. If he wins, what it will show not just New York, but the entire country, that if you have an agenda that speaks to the needs of working families, if you are prepared to deal with the reality that the very richest people in America are becoming much richer, while tens of millions of families are struggling to put food on the table and pay the rent and pay for health care, if he wins, the message goes all over this country. You can stand up to the oligarchs. We can start electing members of Congress and mayors and governors who stand with the working class.
Senator Sanders, as you know, in 2024, President Trump increased his vote total in almost every borough in New York City. Our data team tells me it is not a fiction that there are Trump supporters from 2024 who are likely, if not already, Zohran Mamdani supporters in 2025. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, I sure can. Many, not all, but many of Trump's supporters understand that the system is broken, that the campaign finance system is corrupt, controlled by billionaires. These are people who cannot afford health care. They can't afford to send their kids to college. They know the system is broken and it favors the people on top. And Trump came along and he said, you know, I'm going to fix it. Well, what Trump is doing is making a bad situation worse. And many of these people are now seeing in Mamdani somebody who is standing up and saying, you know what, I know you can't afford housing. I know you can't afford childcare. And we're going to stand together and create a city that works for all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. And I think that's an appeal to Trump supporters. It's an appeal to just many, many people who want real change, not only in New York, but throughout this country.
Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, was asked yesterday if Zohran Mamdani is the new face of the Democratic Party. He said no. Agree or disagree?
Well, I think if Mamdani wins, it will send a message from one end of this country to the other, that not only is it good policy to stand with working families and to understand the pain that they are experiencing, it's good politics as well. People are sick and tired of status quo politics, of people who don't say anything, who are afraid to stand up to the powers that be. And if Mamdani wins, I think the message goes up, yeah, we can take on the oligarchs. We can create a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So, yeah, I do think that a win by Zoran Mamdani will be significantly important policy-wise and politically for this country.
Senator Sanders, to what degree are you aggravated that the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has yet to endorse Mamdani?
That's Mr. Schumer's view. I am working as hard as I can to see that Mamdani is elected the next mayor. Mr. Schumer has to make his own decisions.
Does his reticence suggest what you were just talking about? Those in the political arena who are afraid to take chances or speak their mind?
Look, there are profound differences within the Democratic world. There are some folks who see the future of the Democratic Party as continuing to get large amounts of money from billionaires, to hire all of these inside the Beltway consultants who, in my view, are way out of touch with reality, to elect candidates who say very little, who don't acknowledge the pain that working class people are experiencing. That's one world. And there's another world. It's a world that says we need profound changes in this country, that in the richest country in the history of the world, we should not be the only major country not to guarantee health care to all, the only major country that doesn't have paid family and medical leave, a country in which we have one of the highest rates of childhood poverty, of senior poverty. And I think millions of people around the country are saying that is not what this great country should be about. We need leadership that stands up to the people on top who have never, ever had it so good and fights for the working class of this country. That's the division within the Democratic Party.
Senator Sanders, your family has tragically been touched by the history of the Holocaust. There are those who accuse Zoran Mamdani of being either anti-Semitic or overtly hostile to the very existence of the state of Israel. How do you respond?
I don't agree with that. I think what Mamdani is saying and what I am saying and what a majority of the American people believe is that Israel had a right to defend itself after the terrible terrorist Hamas attack against them. But Israel and Netanyahu did not have a right to go to war against the Palestinian people, kill at least 65,000 of them, injure 160,000 more, and decimate the entire infrastructure of Gaza, hospitals, healthcare, universities, schools. That Israel did not have the right to do. And that is, I think, the point that Mamdani is making is that we should not be continuing to fund an extremist Netanyahu government who has caused so much horror in Gaza.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, I appreciate your time, sir, as always. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Patrick Gaspard joins me now, former executive director for the Democratic National Committee. He has helped advise Zoran Mamdani's campaign. Patrick, it's always good to see you. Thank you so much for your time. You were described in a recent New York Times Sunday magazine piece as a key figure, I'm quoting, connecting Mamdani with many of the cities, that is New York's, power players in the months since the primary. First of all, is that true? What do they fear about Zoran Mamdani? And what, if anything, have you told them, the power players, to be less than fearful about?
Well, Major, you can believe some things that you read in the New York Times. Yes, that happens to be true. I've had the privilege of helping to make certain introductions, ease along conversations. And I think that business leaders, civic leaders who have met Zoran Mamdani for the first time are impressed with his openness, his intellectual curiosity and engagement. They're clear that this is somebody who is decisive about where he's trying to go, but he doesn't have a rigidity about how we get there, right? There are outcomes that he wants for average New Yorkers, and he thinks that he can find some synergy with those business leaders, with those civic leaders, with those elected officials to achieve those outcomes. And I think there's been excitement at how nimble and creative he is.
A specter is part of this campaign. That is to say, the specter of President Trump, who has made it very clear that if Zoran Mamdani is elected mayor of New York City, he will do what he can to cut off federal funds directed toward New York City. My colleague Ed O'Keefe saw Zoran Mamdani earlier today and asked him about what he might do in a relationship with President Trump should he be elected. Let's listen to that.
What is your message to him here in the closing days as he observes these final hours of the campaign? And would you call him later this week if you're the victor to try to sort out how to work together?
If he wants to actually deliver on the campaign he ran to deliver cheaper groceries and a lower cost of living, I am there and I am ready to have that conversation and work together towards that. If he wants, however, to attack New Yorkers and get on the phone to speak about how we can work together at the expense of those New Yorkers, that's not a conversation I'm willing to have.
Patrick, you work very closely with President Obama. You know the powers of the executive branch. How do you imagine a Trump-Mamdani relationship, should it come to pass, playing out?
Well, Major, let's first remind your viewers that New York pays into the federal tax system a heck of a lot more than it gets back, right? There's a myth that people like Donald Trump are always trying to project about our major cities as if they are taking something from the rest of America. They are giving more than they receive in return. That's a critical thing to remember. Donald Trump is going to find out in a hurry that he is no longer getting a free pass in New York. We all know that the sitting incumbent mayor, Eric Adams, cut a deal with the Trump administration and basically said that he would not resist them. He wouldn't resist their incursions into the city on immigration, wouldn't resist their bossing him around on the economy and on the budget. In turn, they would bury the corruption case against him, which they did. He's going to find in Zoran Mamdani this is a person with integrity, with courage, and someone who is grounded in community. When you come for Zoran Mamdani, you're not just coming for him as an individual. There is a movement that's been attached to this campaign, and in about 180 precincts across the city, Major, there are communities of older Chinese and South Asian immigrants who voted for Donald Trump, who are also supporting Zoran Mamdani. So Trump and his supporters are going to find out in a hurry that there are a lot of Trump voters who will be displeased if he acts this way towards the mayor-elect and towards their city.
Patrick, you're also quoted in that New York Times Sunday magazine piece saying none of this works, meaning the movement, without him speaking up on Gaza. Gaza is a gateway. What did you mean by that?
Well, there's been such a sea change, Major, in this city and throughout the Democratic Party, where you find over 75% of Democratic voters disagree with the approach that Benjamin Netanyahu and his very right-wing cabinet have taken on the collective punishment of Palestinians in not just Gaza, but in the West Bank as well. They're displeased with the decision that their elected officials have made to continue to fund that slaughter instead of working to apply pressure towards peace. And so we've seen a kind of parting of ways between base voters in our party and where many elected leaders stand. Zoran Mamdani entered this race and focused on affordability, the overwhelming crisis in people's lives. But I'm confident that if not for his moral clarity on what peace needs to look like in the future for Israelis and for Palestinians, that in a way he doesn't get to first base on the broader argument that he was trying to make. It's not dissimilar, Major, to the experience that I had when I helped elect Barack Obama in 2008. Barack Obama, as a state senator in Illinois, was dead set against the Iraq War. Everyone that we were running against in that campaign had voted for the Iraq War resolution, and they were having a difficult time by 2008 explaining that to our base voters in Iowa, South Carolina, Nevada, et cetera. And that made it hard for them to break through and easier for Barack Obama to then be able to make the case on healthcare and the economy. So you know that in these moments, the environment, the zeitgeist can kind of overwhelm the best laid plans of any elected official. And I think Gaza as an issue in New York and throughout other parts of the Democratic base in America has mushroomed into that kind of a test.
Patrick Gaspard, I appreciate your perspective very much. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Major. Take care.
Still to come tonight, a record-breaking number of New Yorkers cast early ballots in the race for mayor, with turnout fueled by young voters. Who benefits the most? Plus, New York Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi snubs the party line while he's backing Andrew Cuomo over the party's nominee, Zoran Mamdani. And as some Democratic socialists like Mamdani gain prominence in the Democratic Party, how do voters feel about this swing within the party that appears to move further left? We've got new polling answering that very question. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back. New York City has already made history ahead of tomorrow's mayoral election. More than 735,000 people cast early ballots, the highest early in-person turnout ever in a non-presidential election in the Empire State. Joining me now to discuss the significance of this and so much more, Howard Wolfson, formerly served as New York City's deputy mayor for government affairs and communications in the Bloomberg administration. I've known Howard in many other iterations in American political life, and Alyssa Cass, who worked on Andrew Yang and Scott Stringer's bids for New York City mayor. It's great to see you both. Howard, let me start with you. What do you make of the early vote totals, and what is your sense of where this race currently stands?
Well, the polling would certainly suggest that it is Mr. Mamdani's race to lose. He is ahead in, I think, literally every poll that I have seen. I think it's very hard for the pollsters to model out this electorate. It was certainly hard for them in the primary, where you had a lot of first-time voters coming out for Mamdani who were not showing up in the polls. Now, whether or not that replicates itself tomorrow, or whether or not there are Cuomo voters who might not have voted in a primary, we're going to find out. But there is an enormous surge of interest. I went to try to vote early yesterday, and the line was really long. So I'm going to come back to my polling place tomorrow at 6 a.m. But look, whether you're for Mamdani or Cuomo or Sliwa, it's good that there is a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of interest in voting in New York. That isn't always the case here.
Alyssa, how do you break all this down?
I echo Howard's point that it's a hard electorate to model. We haven't had this competitive a general election in New York for a long time, but there's everything I've seen from the early vote data so far, I think confirms the polling that we've seen, that we're looking at a significant Zoran victory. And I think when you look at the campaign Zoran's run, and when you've run a almost error-free general election campaign that centers the issue that voters of all shapes, sizes, and neighborhoods prioritize the most, at a moment when the status quo is working for few New Yorkers, I think it's a safe bet that Zoran is on a glide path to win tomorrow night, and in my view, to win by more than 50%.
Howard, Mike Bloomberg, who you once worked for, has donated considerable amounts to the super PACs supporting Andrew Cuomo. I understand you are generally supportive of Andrew Cuomo. What's the case for the Cuomo campaign?
Well, I should say once worked for and still work for.
Yes,
so in
forgive
case
me.
My boss is listening. No, I haven't quit today. Look, the case is in a lot of respects that this is the second toughest job in America. It is a budget of over $100 billion. It is a workforce of 300,000 people. It is the largest city in the United States. It has crises on a near daily basis. Andrew Cuomo is someone who has served in government at the highest levels. He has been a chief executive in New York State. He knows how to run things and how to get things done. And in many respects, Mr. Mamdani, although he is very charismatic and he is very intelligent and has run a very good campaign, has never managed anything more than an office of 4 people in the assembly. And for many of us, the sort of on-the-job training that would be required by anyone with his lack of experience is a bet that we're just not prepared to make for mayor.
Alyssa?
The case for Andrew Cuomo. The case for Andrew Cuomo is one I think Howard.
Oh, you can make the case for Mamdani if you want.
I'd love to. I mean, the case for Mamdani is this. We're in a moment of the city where almost every New Yorker is experiencing what I like to think of as a parallel crisis of affordability. Whether you are poor, working poor, middle class, or upper middle class, this city is not working for you, and it's hard to envision to see a future for yourself here. When what Zoran is offering is a mayoralty that is laser focused on affordability. And that's the sort of focus that not only individual New Yorkers need, but that this city needs. Cities thrive when the middle class and working families are here. They're the people who care that the school system works, that the trash is picked up, that streets are paved, and that it's safe. They're the ones with that are most invested and using the daily services of the city, and offering an agenda that works and appeals to these New Yorkers, the New Yorkers who are really not only the base, the backbone of our tax base, but the backbone of our social and physical infrastructure. That's something to vote for. And at a time when the status quo in New York is working for almost no one, it's time to reach for something new versus a relic of a failed past here in New York State.
Alyssa Cass and Howard Wolfson. Howard Wolfson still working for Mike Bloomberg, as if anyone was momentarily dislodged by my blunder there. Howard, Alyssa, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. New York Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi joins me now. He says he is not voting for Zohran Mamdani. I want to read to you something you're familiar with, but my audience might not be, a recent social media post of yours, Congressman. I'm a Democratic capitalist, not a Democratic socialist. I endorse Andrew Cuomo. I cannot back a declared socialist with a thin resume to run the most complex city in America. We need leaders who will fight crime, not undermine the police, who will create jobs, not harm the economy, who will keep taxes down, not make it more expensive for middle-class families to live here. Congressman, it's good to see you. Anything else you want to say about this race the eve before it's decided?
You know, I think it's exciting that so many people are recognizing how important the stakes are here, and that's why you see such a big turnout. I think that anything could happen because of the enthusiasm of people on different ends of the spectrum who see this as being just a really important time.
And if you were to be asked, well, isn't Cuomo a kind of legacy politician, same old, same old? Yes, he's experienced, but some of that experience is tainted by scandal or underperformance. What would you say?
I'd say Andrew Cuomo's not perfect, and he's got his flaws. You know, I've had my battles with him over the years, but I think that he's got a record of experience that shows he can get things done. And as your previous commentators were just saying, that, you know, you got to pick up the garbage and run the schools. And I mean, Zohran Mamdani doesn't even want to do mayoral control of the schools. I don't understand that. We need somebody who's going to run the city in an effective way. And Mamdani, I think, has been successful, much like President Trump, because he recognizes everybody's economic insecurity. Everybody's freaking out about the cost of living. That's the #1 issue in New York. It's the #1 issue in the country. And Trump and Mamdani both tapped into that. The problem is that his policies are bad for New York because he wants to raise taxes in New York at a time when we're losing so much population here. When I was born, I'm 63 years old. When I was born, there were 42 members of Congress from New York State. Today, there's 26 members. Next census is going down to 25 members. And that's a problem we're having in a lot of Democratic areas throughout the country. We've got to remain competitive like the other places in the country where people are moving to. I don't want to race to the bottom. I don't want to become like Florida and Texas. I don't want to not pay our teachers and not pay our cops. I don't want to have uninsured children and uninsured adults. But at the same time, we have to recognize we can't just keep on raising everybody's taxes and not give them the quality of life that they want.
Would you consider mayoralty of Zohran Mamdani a real and genuine and ongoing threat to the financial health of New York City?
If he gets away with trying to implement the policies that he's proposed, it would be very, very bad for New York. Yes, I think it would be. You know, we're already in trouble in New York in that we've got high taxes. And, you know, Mike Bloomberg used to say, you know, it's expensive to live here, but in return, we're going to give you a quality product. So over the past, 10, 15 years, we've kept the high cost, in fact, increased the cost in some respects, but didn't give the same high quality product. We've got to give the high quality of life in New York City and New York State and try and keep the costs down for people, because that's what everybody's concerned about, are the costs.
Congressman, I saw some information this morning that the fund that trades in city and state, municipal and state bonds has gone up 3% since the Democratic primary made Zohran Mamdani the nominee. And the traders were saying the reason for that is because so many things put in place after the near bankruptcy of New York City in the 1970s, the control board, fiscal guardrails, debt limit, balanced budget requirement, the governor and the legislature have to approve tax increases, all reassure them that whatever Mamdani promises, he's probably not going to be able to do. And therefore, they're not concerned about the long-term or even mid-term fiscal health of New York City. How do you evaluate that?
I think that the governor has come out and said she will not support the idea of raising taxes in New York City. Zoran Mondani has said, hey, he's going to continue to build this juggernaut he has of supporters to try and change the policy in New York State. So it's something we still have to be concerned about. Listen, he's a very intelligent, charismatic guy who's very effective on social media, but his policies are just bad for New York. And I think that we have to learn from what he's done by tapping into people's economic anxiety. I think that income inequality is a real thing. I think that, I'm for raising the taxes, but do it at the national level, not at the state or city level where we're chasing people and businesses out of our state. The minimum wage in America is $7.25 an hour. It's way too low. Let's not raise the minimum wage in New York. Let's raise the minimum wage throughout the country so we don't make it less attractive to live here or to do business here. We've got to figure out how we can provide people with an enhanced quality of life without making their bank statements down to zero.
New York Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi, I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
From New York to national races, how Republicans are working, some would say overtime, to make Zoran Mamdani the face of the entire Democratic Party and use that, if they can do it, to their benefit in next year's midterms. More on that next, right here on The Takeout.
We want a government that is responsive and honest, that works for the many and not just the few. Then we have to get out there and vote for it.
Welcome back to The Takeout. That was a very recognizable figure, former President Obama, rallying with Virginia Democratic candidate for governor Abigail Spanberger Saturday. Something he has not done for Zoran Mamdani. But sources tell CBS News Obama called Mamdani and praised his campaign this weekend over a private phone call. Joining me now, Boz Shakir, who served as the campaign manager for Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign. John McCarthy served as senior advisor in the Biden White House, and longtime Republican strategist Aaron McGuire. The family table is absolutely full. It's great to have you all here. Thank you very much. I was going to go this way. So tell me what you think about the New York City mayor's race. And by Wednesday morning, Boz, is that the race we are all going to be talking about, or are we going to be talking about Virginia and New Jersey?
Well, right now, what you see in New York, the turnouts are incredibly high. So it's affirming of the Zoran case that he was mobilizing a bunch of people who unfortunately had sat out the 2024 election. So on that score, I'm happy about the turnout. We'll see if Virginia and New Jersey are commensurately as excited. I hope that they are. The early returns of the Trump 2 administration is that it has metastasized as much or even more activism on the Democratic side in his first 200, 300 days than his first term did. So I think there is the energy right now, and we'll see what happens.
John, what's your assessment?
I mean, I think that Democrats should be really excited right now. And part of that is because what we're witnessing firsthand is a generational shift in the Democratic Party, not just in the age of our candidates, but actually in how they're talking and what they're talking about. And I wouldn't say that you should focus in or read too much into any one of these races, but actually step back for a second and take them in kind of as a whole, right? I mean, you could go to Brooklyn, you could go to a diner in Jersey, or you could go to like rural Virginia. And in all of these places, people will tell you that like cost of living and like affordability are the things that are on their minds. It's not the stuff that like people are talking about here in Washington. And that's the stuff that's been occupying the Democratic Party for far too long.
And when you talk about a generational shift, as someone who was close to the Biden White House, was that something you were unsuccessful in resisting or should have been paying closer attention to maybe 2 or 3 years ago?
I mean, I think that each and every election has a different question, right? And I think after Trump won, one of the questions was about stability and returning to norms. And I think President Biden was very successful at that. And, you know, this election is now going to be about how do we carry out a new kind of Democratic majority? How do we restore all of these institutions that have been torn down by the Trump administration? And we need fresh eyes for that. We need new solutions, because what voters have been telling us time and time again is that Democrats have not been providing that.
Aaron?
I think for Democrats, and what I'm looking at coming out of the election this week, is the civil war that sits within the Democrat Party. And you asked about the New York City mayoral race specifically, and I can use that as a microcosm. Just look at Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, and Barack Obama. These 3 men have each handled Zoran Mamdani's campaign differently. It took a lot of twisting, a lot of arm pulling to get Hakeem Jeffries to endorse Zoran Mamdani
as the nominee. And that's as far as he went.
And then he said, well, he's not the leader. He's not the future of the Democrat Party. Kind of side hugged him in, but still wants to keep distance. You see Obama, who's choosing to go out and campaign with Spanberger and Sherrill, what you would consider—
Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey,
Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey, you would consider more moderate older school style Democrats versus what you're seeing in a Zoran Mondani, who's more reflective of the Democrat base. You see him doing that because you see Obama trying to use his political leverage to try and signal to the party to try to come back from toward the middle away from Mondani.
And Chuck Schumer not doing anything at all.
And Chuck Schumer staying quiet because that Democrat base in New York City that kicked Andrew Cuomo out, that told Eric Adams to go pound sand, is the same one he needs in a primary base to be able to get there. This is what is going on in the Democrat Party right now. And so Republicans will talk about Zoran, not only because he's a communist and a socialist. And everything he will do, his policy positions in New York, but because of the fractures that so intrinsically sit within the Democrat Party, that fracturing is the opportunity for Republicans, because that fracturing is showing up not only in Democrats' approval ratings, which are some of their historically lowest, but also in the generic ballot looking at the congressionals.
When Senator Sanders was with me earlier in the show, he said there is a divide within the Democratic Party about this energy, youth, and attitudinal approach to affordability and the like.
Well, when I hear talks about fracturing, I'm surprised and stunned and amazed that also Donald Trump and Elon Musk have decided they'd like to endorse Andrew Cuomo.
Elon
That's
Musk
the first question I asked. Yeah, like, why? Wow. What is it that is so inspiring about Andrew Cuomo? That no, Curtis Lewa, unacceptable Republican. It has to be
That's
Andrew Cuomo.
Disingenuous, and you know it. You know they're not supporting him because they think that Curtis Lewa isn't. I am. Thank you so much for the opportunity to do so.
I'd love to hear
They're not pushing back on Curtis Lewa because they don't think he's a good Republican or a good person.
But they love Andrew Cuomo.
No, they don't. Then listen to Donald Trump's own words.
Did you see Elon Musk's tweet?
I would love to be able to finish the comment I'm making about Donald Trump. Donald Trump said, I don't like Cuomo. I don't get along with him. But he is playing political calculus and math. That is what they are doing. They are not supporting Andrew Cuomo because they like an Italian who was a former governor of a state who not only tanked the economy, killed people in nursing homes with COVID-positive patients, but was run out of office for saying he was Italian when he was sexually assaulting people.
A lot of this is the politics of old age, right? Like which former politician is endorsing which current politician. And outside of conversations like this is the only table that people are sitting and actually caring about any of that. I would love to meet the voter who's like, I'm thinking about voting for Mamdani, but like, what does Obama think? And the difference is it's not actually a civil war inside the Democratic Party. And here's why. It's because I think that, both wings of the Democratic Party can actually come together and have this conversation. And we're talking about it as a party. And that is very different than what Republicans have done. Republicans have basically said, I'm just going to put my hand up and look for direction from Donald Trump about where we are going. Democrats are having a robust and exciting conversation about this. And that's what voters are looking to. That's what voters are looking for.
Leadership in the party, which is Donald Trump, the leader of the Republican Party, versus Democrats who have to have a conversation to see who's leading the band today, because you guys don't have a leader. There is a vacuum of leadership, and it is being directly reflected in how they're treating the
There's not a
Mondani
vacuum of leadership, though. If you look at the people who are thinking about running in 2028, our Democratic governors, our leaders in the Senate, all of these leaders are remarkable. Any of them could make an incredible president. And this tapestry of leadership actually shows the breadth of the Democratic Party and all of the ways that we can actually find a path to victory.
One of the things this show is proud of is we can have someone at the table say, the conversation at this table is utterly irrelevant to American political life. We're brave enough to have that conversation. We are very much brave enough. Paz Shakir, John McCarthy, Aaron McGuire. Spirited conversation, I think, all of you, very, very much. The path forward, with New Yorkers set to select a new mayor. What does the future look like in New York? Plus, Democrats are embracing Zoran Mamdani's socialism, yes or no? New CBS News polling is ahead that answers that question right here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. A new CBS News poll, I love saying that, new CBS News poll reveals how Democrats view socialism and capitalism, at least within the context of the direction of their party. Joining me now with those numbers, your friend and mine, Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. What do we know?
We know that Democrats would see their party take a direction that involves socialism and capitalism, that it is a mix of the two. That's what 6 in 10 Democrats tell when they talk about the direction of the party. Now, having said that, there is a slight preference for socialism over capitalism within that. The other thing is, when you say the word new, in some ways, this is not new, Major, in the sense that if you go back to the 2020 primaries, exit polling showed there were plenty of Democrats who favored a socialist or a more socialist direction for the party. The other part of this is, it's not necessarily economic theory that's going on here. It's more a response, voters tell you, to an economy and an economic system that they see as rigged, that they see as favoring the wealthy, and it's a response. What you do with that in terms of policy is a matter of debate.
Right. Doesn't necessarily mean they're reading Karl Marx. It just means they're unhappy with the system as it exists, and they may be as much anti-establishment as they are socialist inclined.
Exactly. And not an uncommon thing across American politics either. It's not only Democrats that think the economy favors the wealthy. People in our polling tell us that across party lines. So, right, the debate is over what one does about that. But overall, that's what we mean, was to unpack this idea of socialism. Many people just read it as change the system. Change
the system. And is there a demographic story to be found? Youth, older, anything in there that we find interesting?
Certainly youth, certainly. Because what you're going to see, and you're going to see this in the vote results, I think, tomorrow, right? Already the early vote shows in a relative way compared to past mayor's races, you might see more youth turnout, at least early. Does that continue tomorrow? Maybe. But that's part of the generational shift that you may see within the Democratic Party as well.
Anthony Salvanto. New polling data and the explanations, as always. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Joining us now, Olivia Reingold, Rob Henderson, who both write for the Free Press. The Free Press, as I'm sure you have read, also owned by our parent company, Paramount Skydance. It's great to have you both with us. Olivia, you did what really good reporters do. You got with the people on buses in New York City and asked them, specifically in the Bronx, what's on their mind. What did you learn?
Well, I learned that voters, at least there, were particularly disengaged, which is not what we're seeing in the rest of the city. We are on track to likely have historic turnout here. And as you were mentioning, so far, that seems to be from people you would think would advantage Cuomo. So those older voters who are more preferential to Cuomo, but you're also seeing a historic turnout from Jewish voters across New York here, and people who are really concerned about what could happen to their community if Zohran is elected.
And Olivia, based on your reporting, do you think there's any possibility of a stunner tomorrow night?
You never know. You never know. I think the one thing that pollsters who are covering this closely agree on is that it's likely going to be much tighter than expected. But most pollsters still favor Mamdani here.
Rob, you wrote a story called The Revolt of the Rich Kids, talking about those who grew up somewhat comfortably but feel anger about what's not available to them that was available to their parents. Help my audience understand what you found.
Yes, well, what I think is going on here is that you see a lot of downwardly mobile children of the elite who are frustrated that they're unable to enter the housing market, that they feel like they're falling behind. A lot of these young people come from comfortable, affluent, upper and upper middle class families, and they don't see themselves replicating that level of success. And so they decide that it's time to support some radically different political ideas in order to restore the rightful status that they believe they are owed. And so you see this tilt increasingly toward socialist ideologies. And the higher up you go in terms of socioeconomic status, the more support you see for ideologies like socialism. And I think what's going on here is that those people who are relatively affluent and credentialed, but sense that they are slipping down the ladder, have decided to support these political figures like Mamdani in order to bolster what they believe they should have in terms of success, in terms of income, in terms of comfort and housing and so on.
Now, Rob, if I had been like that, my father would have sternly tried to talk me out of it. In your reporting, did you find any stern parents trying to talk their children out of this?
I did not. So unlike Olivia, I haven't spoken to voters and families and so on. But what I can say is that, I've read a lot of the research in sociology and social psychology on this question, and you find this pattern consistently. We have data going back 100 plus years now. And you see that when children who are born into comfortable circumstances believe that they will be unable to replicate what they had in terms of their parents' level of success, they become radicalized, they become angry, and they support a lot of political agitation and demonstrations and so on. And this is why, even when you look at college campuses, it's the most elite schools that you see the most political unrest. And that's because, the people who attend those types of schools come from affluent families. And, this can be one way for them to acquire status and what they believe will be, beneficial policies for themselves.
Olivia, one of the reasons you rode the bus in the Bronx was because for a time it was subsidized. It was free. Zoran Mamdani is promising free public transit. Do people in New York believe that public transit can be free, based on your reporting?
I'm not sure people care. I think that this is really a rebuke of the way things are. A lot of the experts, this has certainly been Cuomo's talking point, that Mamdani, he doesn't have a lot of experience. He can't even get a lot of what he's promising done. And voters so far, in the primary, they certainly didn't care. So this is really a rebuke of the establishment, of the way things are traditionally done, and that obviously, if Mamdani does win, is the next major test. Can he get any of this done?
Olivia Reingold and Rob Henderson, both writers for the Free Press. I appreciate your time, your expertise, and your reporting. Please tune in to CBS News 24/7 tomorrow for election night coverage. That will begin at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Takeout. Also, I will anchor special coverage beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern, right here. Happy Monday, everyone. It's fantastic to be back. This is the Takeout. Relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever. The Daily Report starts now.